Hey guys, if you follow my channel at all, especially my Kokanee content, you will know how important understanding depth to water temperature relationships are to my success on the water. And forever I have relied on this Fishhawk TD. This is a depth data logger. You turn it on, you drop it down to the water column, and it gives you the water temperature at different depths at 5-foot increments to as deep as you drop it. And I've used this single device here. It's got an internal battery, but it's lasted me over 4 years. And it's just an absolutely stellar and important part of my success as a kokanee angler, but also targeting other species like lake trout and other temperature dependent fish species. Now, unfortunately, they discontinued this year, and so a lot of folks were struggling finding one. And I emailed them. I said, "What's up? Why are you guys going to bring out a new one?" They say they're going to bring out a new one next year, but it's weird to me. Why did you stop making this and not have the other one ready to release at the same time? So I hope that they're honest about bringing out a new one next year. But this is one of the best investments I've ever made. And so a lot of my followers were really frustrated. They couldn't find these, and they wanted to get their hands on some sort of temperature depth data logger. And I was just cruising around on Facebook and I saw an advertisement for this thing called Probe Fishing. So this is a company out of Sweden. It cost me $150. I spent my own money, so this is an unbiased review, and I've been using it for the past few weeks. This is a small depth temperature data logger that's designed to run on your line. So you can see the line can run through here. It only weighs like a few grams. It's crazy light. It's all the sensors and stuff are buried inside of this resin body. You can see the circuitry through there, and you can see the battery right there. And what's good about this one, a lot of people complain about this one. He's worried about the battery running out, but to be fair, this thing battery's still working great for me after 4 years. But this one actually comes with a little USB device and a magnetic clip, and you plug this USB-C and you can charge it, okay? And then this connects to an app on your phone, okay? And when you drop this, if you cast it, which is what it's designed to do, is actually be cast and run on a swivel up in front of your gear, it'll give you real-time data on each cast on how deep your gear went and the temperature and data at that depth. Of course, I don't do that for every cast. I just want to go out and get a one-time capture of what the stratification of the lake's temperature is. And so I just rigged mine up onto a little wire leader and snapped a weight to it so that I could just drop it over the side or clip it to my downrigger and drop it down. And so the question I wanted to ask is it accurate in terms of temperature, at least in regard, is it getting the similar output as this, and is it repeatable, and is it a good investment, and does it measure accurately depth as well? So that's pretty important. Now, there's always this like nagging question, right? Like, is what this telling me real, or is what this telling me is real, right? Because I can't validate the data. Like, I can't go down there and like scuba dive. I don't have that skill set or equipment. But I do know from years and years and years of using this that when this says, it's 54, 56 degrees, and that's where I expect to see the kokanee at that depth, that's where I end up finding the kokanee. So this Fishhawk TD has always reliably put me on the fish. It's always seemed to have correctly identified the correct temperature depth relationships for me in terms of making biological sense. It also shows me a stratification of the lake that makes sense in the terms of the physics of water and stratification of lakes. It marks the thermocline very well. So the question is did this probe, does it do the same? And so I dropped it down at the same time with a Fishhawk TD and measured it. But I also have just been using it off and on and trying to see how good the data is. So let's just dig into that. So first I'm going to show you how this works. I have data stored on here. I actually tried to do this on the water when I was on Flathead Lake this past week, but my camera's totally crapped out on me, which was really frustrating. I had a great whitefish bite, and the whitefish were hanging out in the 50 to 70 foot range. I was marking a lot of those fish. But when you go on your phone, you download an app. It comes with a little thing you can scan inside this snuff container. There's the QR code. You scan that, you download the app. It's this little green dot here. So what you end up getting is this screen here where it says away right now, where you see cast to start today's session. It says probe away. If you go out on the water and like tap this against the side of the boat or drop it in the water and splash it a few times, it'll activate the probe. The probe will connect. It has really good battery life. I've, on a single charge, gone out many times, like a week later, and it still works fine. So it holds its charge if under light use, like a kokanee angler would typically use it. But you can see on the bottom here, you can see some of the data that I have stored. So I'm going to go to the data that I had stored from this one. And you can see when you drop it down, you get real-time measurement of data of, like, you can just scroll with your finger on this little yellow blob here. You can see at the surface it shows the temperature 52.4 at 0, and then you can just go down through different increments, and of course it records continuously, so you get data on the way down and on the way up. Okay, and the fishhawk doesn't do that. It just, you drop it down once, it just gives you one set of data, in 5 foot increments. Okay, I'm gonna pull a little table up here. This is the comparison of at 10 foot increments, since I really don't need to go at 5 foot increments. That's just silly. I was in about 100 foot of water here. You can see this sensor went down to 103 and the fishhawk recorded 100 on the depth. So what I've noticed about the probe right away is that the fishhawk and the probe data, they get about the same depth estimates. They're usually plus minus a few feet of each other, and it's usually within 3 feet of what my sonar says. So it's very accurate when it comes to depth, right? So this little probe, it tells you the depth very, very well. Now, but you start looking at this temperature data, and my Garmin was reading about 68, 69 degrees. It's been very hot in the Flathead Valley this year. In the fall, it's just been, seems like never-ending summer. And you can see the fishhawk reads about 67.9 degrees, which is very close to what the Garmin was saying, my transducer. But the probe on its initial exposure to water shows 52.4, which is actually much closer to what the air temperature was in the morning when I was on the water. And you can see that the probe data is very different, much colder than what the fishhawk data is showing. You can see the fishhawk, it shows basically 67, 68 degrees down to about 40 feet. And then you see that dramatic temperature drop between 40 and 50, where it goes from 67, 57.1. That's the thermocline, right? This makes sense. The lake is still heavily stratified. All the whitefish and lake trout that I was catching that day were at 60, 70 to 80 feet. They're down there in that optimal 50 to low 50s, upper 40s range is what those fish like. And it gets continually colder as you go deeper down. So at the bottom, it's 42.7. So the fishhawk, the data looks good. It makes sense based on what I was seeing in terms of the biology, that is the fish and their behavior and their distribution within the water column. But then look at the probe data. It doesn't make any sense. It starts out 52.4. It's running almost 20 degrees colder than what the fishhawk is on the way down. It doesn't show really a strong thermocline anywhere. It's just a gradual declining of temperature as you go down. And then it bizarrely starts getting warmer around 60 feet deep. Now, these are all dropped at exactly the same speed. So they're going down together, these two devices, and they're getting completely different results. But the probe data doesn't make any sense, right? Because obviously the surface temperature is way off. I knew that the water temperature was much warmer than 52.4. I would have been wearing a dry suit if it was that cold. And then it bizarrely gets warmer at the bottom, like it's almost as warm at 100 feet as it is at the surface. That doesn't make sense. And then what's even weirder is look at the probe's data when it's coming up. It's completely different than when it was going down. Those numbers are sometimes different by up to 12 degrees. That's a huge difference when targeting fish. And so this is what I found time and time again with the probe, is the temperature data is not reliable. It's not repeatable. Even on the same drop up and down, I'm getting completely different results on the temperature. They don't match biology of what I'm seeing. They don't match the fish hawk data, and they don't even match. It doesn't even match itself. I can drop the fish hawk up and down 20 times, and I'm going to be within a degree on most of the data readings. But with the probe, I'm not seeing that at all. So I don't think it's a good investment if you're looking for a temperature depth data logger. It's a great depth data logger, and it's really small. And if you want to see what your gear is at a certain depth with particular lures, I think it's great for that. But its depth temperature data is just a mess, and I don't recommend it. It's a waste of $150. I'm probably never going to use it. Maybe I'll play around with it to try and validate some of my snap weight data, but in terms of depth, but in terms of temperature, it's not reliable. And I'm going to talk about why I think this is. And I mean, part of this device, what's neat about it is that how small it is, and but it is embedded in resin. And there is a small hole here, which I'm assuming is where the water is allowed to come into contact with the sensor that reads the temperature. I don't know, because I'm not a designer, I'm not an engineer, but to me it makes sense that little tiny hole here on the back is where the water goes in and also activates the data logger. If it's not, then that means that the temperature sensor is buried somewhere within the resin. That might even explain more of the issues. But I think that the temperature sensor is probably either down in this tiny hole, which is surrounded by lots of resin, or it's actually embedded in the resin itself. And because of that, it gives really poor accuracy on temperature. Whereas the temperature sensor on the fish hawk is right there. It's exposed, so there's a lot of water can move around it, and they've minimized plastic around it, so that there's not like a heat effect from, or a cooling effect of the device itself. So no, I don't recommend it. Save your money for another data logger if you want to know temperature depth data. So hopefully they come out with a better fish hawk TD that you can just snap on. Fingers crossed. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Just remember, fish smarter, not harder.